They told me the snowstorm was the worst in a century, but I don't think anyone planned for the body count to outnumber the Christmas stockings. Christmas Eve in the middle of nowhere. My shitty SUV was on its last legs, the heater barely coughing out warmth as I slid into the driveway of my late uncle's cabin. Calling it a cabin was generous. It was more like a condemned shack dressed up in a flannel shirt. Still, the inheritance was mine, and I needed to check it out. I barely got the door open before a gust of icy wind shoved me inside. The place smelled like moldy eggnog and dead things. Charming. I flicked on my flashlight and froze. The living room wasn't just decorated for Christmas. It was a damn shrine. Hundreds of ornaments dangled from the ceiling. Garlands hung like nooses. And the Christmas tree? It was strung with what looked suspiciously like human hair. Jesus fucking Christ, I muttered, stepping closer. That's when I saw the ornaments weren't glass. They were teeth. Human teeth. My uncle had always been a weirdo, but this? This was some Buffalo Bill shit. The next moment, the tree moved. No, not the tree. The thing in the tree. A clawed hand shot out, grabbing my arm, and I screamed. What followed was a blur of teeth, claws, and the worst Christmas carol I'd ever heard, sung in a voice that sounded like it came from hell itself.
If you think Santa only visits the good kids, you're dead wrong. I'd just finished a long shift at the diner when I decided to take a shortcut home. Big mistake. The snow was falling heavy, and the streetlights gave everything a sickly yellow glow. That's when I saw him, Santa. He was standing in the middle of the road, his red suit stained dark, his beard matted. He turned to look at me, and I swear his eyes weren't human. They were black, empty pits. Ho, 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 he rasped. Have you been naughty? I froze. Buddy, I don't have time for this. That's when he pulled the axe from behind his back. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I bolted down the alley, slipping on ice and slush. But Santa was right behind me. His boots crunched like death, and every time I looked back, he was grinning like he was having the time of his life. I sprinted through the streets, taking twists and turns trying to loose the bastard. Soon I no longer heard him behind me. I went through several more streets just to be sure, and finally made it to my apartment, slamming the door behind me. For a moment, it was silent. Then came the sound of heavy boots on the stairs.
I always thought Elf on the Shelf was creepy. Turns out I was right. Except this one wasn't just watching. It was waiting. It started as a joke. My roommate, Jason, found a battered old elf on the shelf at a thrift store. "Let's name him Buddy," he said, grinning like a moron. I hated it instantly. Buddy was always where he shouldn't be. On my pillow, in the fridge, staring at me from the bathroom sink. I swore Jason was moving him to mess with me, but one night, I woke up to find Buddy sitting on my chest. "What the fuck, Jason?" I hissed, tossing the doll across the room. I had my first trickle of unease. Jason was supposed to be out for the night, or so I thought. The next morning, I found Buddy perched on the nightstand. His face was twisted, his painted grin somehow sharper, more alive. That night, a scream woke me up. I rushed to Jason's room, but it was too late. Buddy wasn't just sitting on Jason. He was tearing into him. Blood soaked the sheets as frenzied tiny hands clawed and tore. I froze, my brain screaming, this isn't real. For a split second, I wondered why Jason was just letting this happen. Then I noticed his neck. I knew then he was gone. Buddy turned his head to me, his eyes gleaming like polished glass.
Everyone says Santa comes down the chimney, but nobody tells you what else might crawl in from the dark. It was the first Christmas without my mom. She always made the holidays perfect. Now, it was just me, Dad, and my little sister Sophie, trying to survive in a house full of silence and ghosts. Dad insisted on keeping up traditions, so we lit the fireplace and hung stockings. Around midnight, as Sophie slept and Dad drowned himself in whiskey, I stayed up watching the flames flicker, That's when I heard the scratching. At first I thought it was the wind, but the sound grew louder, sharper, like claws on metal. I stared at the chimney, the shadows dancing on the brick. Then something fell into the fireplace. A charred bone, followed by a second and a third. "What the hell?" I muttered. The next moment, a hand shot out from the chimney. A gnarled, blackened hand with claws like daggers. I screamed as a figure slithered down, its skin burned and blistered, its eyes glowing red like embers. "Who's been naughty this year?" it hissed, its voice like crackling fire. Dad burst into the room, his drunken stupor replaced by sheer terror. But it didn't matter. The thing lunged at him, ripping his throat out in one swift motion. Blood sprayed the stockings. I grabbed Sophie and ran, the creature's raspy laughter echoing behind us. It didn't follow. It didn't have to. I realized then, it wasn't here to kill us. It was here to take our memories of Christmas.
What started as a night of cheap booze and ugly sweaters turned into the bloodiest Christmas party of my life. I wasn't in the mood to party, but my best friend Derek dragged me out anyway. "Come on, man," he said. "Free booze and Marissa's gonna be there." The party was packed, and everyone was hammered by the time I arrived. Derek handed me a beer, and we started making fun of the guy in the reindeer onesie, dancing like a jackass. Then the lights went out. At first, we thought it was a power outage. People pulled out their phones, cheering and laughing. But when the first scream cut through the dark, the laughter died. The lights flickered back on, and there he was, a man in a Santa suit holding a sledgehammer dripping with blood. Marissa's body was crumpled at his feet, her head caved in like a broken ornament. Chaos erupted. People screamed and ran, but the doors wouldn't budge. Santa laughed, swinging the hammer like he was playing whack-a-mole. I grabbed Derek, and we hid in the kitchen. "What the fuck is going on?" he whispered, shaking. Before I could answer, the kitchen door burst open, and Santa charged in. I threw a chair at him, and Derek screamed as the hammer came down. I ran, slipping on blood and vomit, my ears ringing with the sound of flesh being pulverized. I made it out the window and ran until my legs gave out. I still don't know who he was or why he did it, but every Christmas, I see his face, grinning behind that fake beard.
When the carolers came to my door, I thought they were just spreading Christmas cheer. I didn't realize they were looking for someone to kill. It started with a knock on the door. I opened it to find a group of carolers, dressed in old-fashioned clothes and singing. Their voices were haunting, almost too perfect. "Nice singing," I said awkwardly, ready to close the door. "Can we come in?" the leader asked, a man with a face too pale and eyes unblinking. "No thanks," I replied, shutting the door. That's when they started screaming. Not singing, screaming. High-pitched, blood-curdling screams that made my skin crawl. I looked through the peephole and saw them clawing at the door, their fingers unnaturally long and sharp, their lips pulling back from their teeth. I pulled out my cell and called the cops, but the line was dead. "How is that even possible?" I let out. The screams stopped, replaced by laughter. "You can't hide forever," the leader said, his voice dripping with malice. They broke the windows, crawling in like spiders. I grabbed a kitchen knife and slashed at the first one, but it didn't even flinch. I bolted out the back door as they closed in. "You should have invited us in," the leader yelled as I jumped the fence. "We'll go ahead and make ourselves at home."
The presents weren't mine, and the things wrapped inside weren't toys. The night before Christmas, my girlfriend Lily asked me to pick up the gifts she'd hidden in her parents' attic. I grumbled, but agreed, wanting to keep the peace. The old house always gave me the creeps. Something about the smell of mothballs and dust felt wrong. I went over, and her parents said they would be expecting Lily at dinner time, but I could come on in. I climbed into the attic, shivering in the icy air. The boxes were stacked high, wrapped in festive paper. I grabbed one, but as I turned, A small box slid off the pile, landing with a soft thud. The wrapping tore slightly, revealing what looked like hair. Human hair. "What the fuck?" I whispered, kneeling to inspect it. The box reeked of iron and decay. I peeled back more of the paper and nearly vomited. Inside was a severed hand, the fingernails painted bright red like holiday ornaments. "Lily?" I called, my voice trembling. Suddenly I heard footsteps on the attic stairs, but when I turned, it wasn't Lily. It was her mom, holding a butcher knife. "You weren't supposed to find those," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We were saving them for Christmas dinner." I ran, crashing through the boxes, but more were falling now. Each one burst open, spilling teeth, eyeballs, and worse. Her dad appeared at the base of the stairs, dragging Lily's lifeless body by the hair. "Merry Christmas," he said, laughing as I screamed.
Santa's reindeer are supposed to be magical, but the thing in my backyard wasn't magic. It was hungry. It was about 15 years ago and started with a noise. Hooves scraping on the roof. My first thought was raccoons, but when I looked outside, I saw something in the backyard. At first, I thought it was a deer. It was huge, standing perfectly still, its antlers stark against the moonlight. It looked surreal with the snowy backdrop. But something was off. Its body looked wrong. Too thin, the legs too long, the head too human. "Probably just a buck," my dad said when I told him. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. That night, I woke up to scratching at my window. I pulled back the curtain, and it was there. Its eyes sunk in black pits, its mouth hanging open to the side as if its jaw was dislocated. "Come outside," it rasped, its voice deep and crackling like a frozen pond. I screamed, waking the whole house. My dad grabbed his shotgun, but when we went outside, the creature was gone. All that was left were hoof prints burned into the snow, leading into the woods. The next day, we found my dog in the yard, ripped to shreds. The creature had left a trail of blood leading to the tree line. I knew it was waiting for me. That night, it came back. This time, it didn't wait at the window. It tore through the back door, antlers crashing into the walls as it snarled. My dad fired, but the bullets didn't stop it. It laughed, a horrible, guttural sound, as it dragged my dad screaming into the woods. I haven't seen my dad since. But every Christmas, I hear the sound of hooves on the roof, and I know it's still out there.